What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So with World Juniors starting in less than 3 weeks at this point, there's going to be a lot of notable 2024 draft prospects playing in that tournament. So I thought it'd be a fun idea to give you my current top 10 in the class of 2024. Because although I don't think that your ranking should massively change after a World Juniors, there is definitely some value in that tournament, considering for some players, it's going to be the best competition they play all year. So I'm going to go 1 through 10 right now. There's going to be some surprises on the list, some guys that you personally don't have your top 10 that I do, and I'm going to go through them, say what I really like about them, maybe some concerns I have with them. So without further ado, let's dive into number 10. Number 10, Anton Siluanov, very interesting prospect, 6'7", 17-year-old, currently playing in the KHL full-time, 37 games, 10 points. He had 6 points in like his first 8 games. Everybody shot him to like number 2 and number 3 in their draft board. I didn't overreact to that. I knew he was eventually going to slow down, obviously only having 4 points in the next 29 games after that. But still, the fact he's doing this at the KHL level at only 17 years old with his size, he can really move. The Zdeno Chara comparisons are going to be all you hear about with this kid because he is that size, but he is far more advanced than a Zdeno Chara when Zdeno Chara was a draft prospect, considering Siluanov is making an impact at the KHL level. Last year, Simashev, a guy that was drafted 6th overall at 6'5" or 6'6", I forget how tall he was, but a big-ass dude, he was only playing in the MHL. He played some KHL games. He was not playing a massive role in the KHL like in Anton Siluanov, so I definitely see why people might have him higher because there's just so much potential with a guy like that in that skating skill. I am a little bit hesitant still. I've definitely watched him probably the least out of anybody on this entire top 10. So I got to dive into him. He definitely can rise. But right now, I think Siluanov is one of the most intriguing defenseman prospects in this draft, without a doubt. And this draft has a lot of defensemen. There's more defensemen to come in this top 10. At number 9, I got Kaden Lindem from the Medicine Hat Tigers of the WHL. Another big boy. He comes in at 6'5". Right now, he's goal scoring at a very high rate for Medicine Hat. He has 22 goals in 26 games after a very solid season last year for them. And yes, 6'5" center, very big bodied, a very smooth skater, not afraid to get up in transition and move off the rush. Just a lot of those raw potential skills that you look at it. It's a pretty basic comparison, but he does kind of remind me of a Caden Berkeley, a big dude with a lot of skill that's not afraid to rip it. Byfield's finally shooting at the NHL level, and shocker, he's finally scoring a lot of goals. So when looking at Lindstrom, he's definitely maybe a project like a Caden Berkeley, but I think those intangible, that shot, skating, and skill at his size is so intriguing. He might not be the 9th best player in the draft class right now, but when you factor in that potential, I think he's definitely up there. He's definitely going to be a guy that if someone takes him very high on draft night, I would understand why. I would see the vision on that, so I have him at number 9. And then number 8, I got a more safe CHL prospect in Berkeley Caden. Berkeley Caden is 5'11", not 6'5", but this guy has just produced at a high level in the CHL, WHL in his career. He had 55 points in 63 games last year, up to 36 and 25 this year. Just that ideal, smart first-line winger that can do everything offensively at a high level. His defensive game isn't that impressive, but when looking at Berkeley, I just think that he's going to end up being a top 6 forward. He just has so much skill. He kind of reminds me of a Ryan Leonard, where he doesn't have the upside of the 4 forwards that I have ahead of him that we're going to get to, but he should be a high-end NHL player. His floor is much higher than a Kaden Lindstrom. So I think in the top 10, I think you're probably getting at the bare minimum of 50 to 50-ish second liner at the bare minimum. He can definitely develop into a good first liner. So I'm not in love with him, but he's definitely a solid prospect. At number 7, I got Zane Perreault. Zane Perreault, definition of an offensive defenseman. This guy is oozing with offensive potential and especially goal-scoring potential. Last year, he tied Drew Doughty's record for a 16 or 17-year-old year before being drafted goal record. He had 21 goddamn goals in like 50 games as a 16 or 17-year-old, and this year he's picking up exactly where he left off, 10 goals, 26 assists for 36 points in 25 OHL games. He's outscoring Michael Misa by like 4 points, who's the projected top 2 pick in 2025. So this guy's an offensive stud. He's an absolute beast, extremely smooth skater, very good stick handler. He just has fantastic offensive potential and is that guy. I don't really have an exact comparison for him, but I would say that he is in line with like a Cale Makar in terms of offense. He's not going to be as good as a Cale Makar, but I definitely see the vision in terms of just so smooth skating, not afraid to absolutely rip it like a Cale Makar that scores 20 plus goals every single year. So when looking at Zane Perreault, he's going to go very high. His stock is absolutely boosted, and I think Saginaw's hosting the Memorial Cup this year, so that's going to be very interesting to see. I'm definitely locking in for all those games before his draft year. So I got Zane Perreault at number 7. At number 6, another defenseman, Zack Beume. He's killing it in college hockey right now. He has 21 points in 16 games for the University of Denver. That is absolutely insane. For comparison, Lane Hutson had a fantastic last year after being drafted. He put up like 48 and 39 or something like that. It's almost Zack Beume's putting up more of a pace, a higher pace than Lane Hutson. And this is his draft year compared to Lane Hutson's draft year +1. It is historic what he is doing in terms of this. And he's honestly not that flashy of a defenseman. When I watched him play at the University of Denver this year, he just makes the right decision. He's not jumping up on plays recklessly like maybe a Zane Perreault does. He just lets the game come to him, and he's so efficient at the blue line, such a great lateral skater. He just controls possession and makes the right play, gets it in front of net for his teammates to do stuff with it. So I think he's a fantastic player. And in terms of all-time stats, to put it in perspective how good he's doing and also transition to the next guy I'm going to go over, you look at what he's doing this year, he is first all-time in terms of NCAA defensemen during their draft year at 1.27 points per game. And mind you, this isn't updated. He had 2 points in his last game. He has 21 points in 16 games now. By far first in the entire college hockey history. He is historically putting up points this year at the college level, so I think this is definitely valid to have him at number 6. And when you look at the guy that's second on this list, and second by a decent margin, it is Artem Leshinov, another 2024 draftee guy, and I have him at number 5. He is Perreault and Beume. They're both offensive defensemen. Artem Leshinov is that two-way, 6'2", ideal number 1 defenseman. Coming into the season, he was pretty consensus the number 1 defenseman. I think he stays there as of right now. Guys like Perreault, Siluanov, Beume, they've definitely closed the gap on Leshinov because there wasn't really this elite guy, but I think Leshinov still is that number 1. He just does everything so well. 15 points in 16 games from Michigan State, which is a good program, but it's not a Michigan or a Minnesota where guys can just rack up points. He's just fantastic. He has an absolute rocket of a shot, physical, two-way defenseman. I think when looking at the way the NHL is trending, definitely Perreault and Beume will work, but he is just that perfect mobile 6'2" number 1. It's going to be very interesting. I think he's the safest defenseman prospect by far, without a doubt, and also has the potential to be in a legit number 1. So I'm not just saying like, oh, he just has a low floor. He has almost as much potential as, probably more than a Beume, than a Perreault, maybe not Siluanov. Siluanov probably has most potential, but Artem Leshinov just overall is the complete package when you're looking for that legit number 1 that last year's draft kind of lacked for the most part. He is that number 1 that we've seen in previous drafts that should be that fantastic two-way defenseman. But into the top 4, at number 4, I got Cole Eiserman. This might be a little bit of a surprise. He's an amazing goal scorer. There's no denying that if he has elite line mates around him, he has the potential and probably will score north of 35 goals every single year. But he's very one-dimensional in that sense. I don't think that he can drive plays. He can finish plays. He can definitely finish plays and get the puck in the back of the net. But besides his shot, he doesn't really offer a ton. Not saying he does everything at a below-average level, but it's like that shot is an A+, then his skating is a B-, his defense is a C, his passing is like a B. Like, I think the top 3 guys that I have ahead of him have more well-rounded games. Cole Eiserman, I would take him second overall still if I did have that franchise center and I could throw Cole Eiserman on their wing just to score goals. You look at it, like if the Chicago Blackhawks got the first overall pick, if the Anaheim Ducks, if the Columbus Blue Jackets, all of that franchise center, yeah, maybe you get Eiserman, you throw them on the wing because Eiserman won't have to create as much. But Eiserman as the number 1 building block of your franchise, I would be a little bit concerned. Still a fantastic prospect. I'm not denying that. Guy's an absolute stud. But he does lack some of the things that you expect in a true number 1 franchise player. I think he's more so a Line than a Matthews, if that makes sense. And I know people are screaming, Matthews hasn't won in the playoffs. But Line needs elite line mates. Line is not going to really drive his own line versus Matthews can just take a team on his back. 2022, 60 goals, 106 points. I think Eiserman's more so in that Line A mold, which Line A's still a very good player. Line A is fantastic. When Pascal Vincent's not coaching him, Line A can give you 35 and 35 for the most part, maybe even 40, 45 if he's on a better team. But when looking at Eiserman, I do have him at 4 right now. Clearly, U.S. Hockey isn't as high on him. He didn't even get invited to the preliminary roster of the World Juniors team. I'm going to have to watch more of him. I have watched a decent amount. I definitely like what I see in terms of that shot, but the overall game, I do favor 3 other prospects ahead of Cole Eiserman. At number 3, speaking of which, Ivan Demidov. Demidov, very skilled player. He is the playmaker, traditional playmaker, compared to Eiserman, who is the goal scorer. Demidov, fantastic, so quick, so deceptive in his moves. His agility is off the charts. Think of like a Nikita Kucherov, and like Nikita Kucherov, doesn't have the hardest shot, but he has such a deceptive release that really goalies don't see coming. Looking at him, looking at his production, he actually outproduced Michkov at 16 years old in the MHL, the Russian Junior League. Last year, he didn't. Michkov was better at the MHL at a 17-year-old, but he was still fantastic. He had 64 points in 44 games, which was 3rd in the entire league. This year, he did have a pretty serious injury to start the year, but he appears to be back playing in the MHL, 9 points in 7 games. I think that he is going to be a first-line center that can give you, he might not be fantastic defensively, but he's probably going to be north of around 70-plus points. And if I see more from him, he can definitely end up being my number 2 prospect. There's no doubt about that. So Ivan Demidov, very skilled, very talented, very good playmaker. Injury does scare me a little bit, but his production last year was so impressive, and his tape last year was so impressive that as of right now, he is my number 3. At number 2, a guy that was not in my top 5, I think, to start the year, but he's played absolutely insane, Konsta Halinas. Konsta Halinas of the Finnish league, La Liga. He has 19 points in 26 games, and especially of late, he's been unreal. I think 17 of those points have come in the last 19 games. Again, against grown men in Liga, probably like the 4th or 5th best league in the entire continent, entire globe. So when looking at Halinas, it's just such an intelligent player, that Finnish two-way center that we've grown accustomed to with an Alexander Barkov, with Sebastian Aho, with the Rupe Hintz. He falls exactly in line with that. So intelligent. And he also is a fantastic skater. He has that high motor, has a very solid shot. With him, I see kind of the Leo Carlsson type of, might not be a superstar top 10 player in the league, but I think at the bare minimum, he's going to be a 55 to 60 point two-way fantastic center. And at his best, this guy can be point per game Selke finalist, Selke winner. So I am kind of with Halinas going more so off floor, because I think Demidov and Eiserman probably do have more potential. But watching Halinas this year against grown men kind of dominate for the most part, or at least play at a very, very high level, I think he's kind of not bust-proof, but I can't see him busting. I can see Demidov's more so skill and speed game, maybe not translating exactly to the NHL because he is a smaller guy. I can see Eiserman being too reliant on his shot and the rest of his game kind of crumbles. I could see that. Halinas, I think, is just a fantastic two-way player. He might not have the offensive upside of the other guys, but he's been so fantastic defensively. I just see Sebastian Aho when I watch Konsta Halinas. So it's not the juiciest pick, but right now he would be my number 2. If Demidov continues to produce and maybe get some KHL games and I get to see him against grown men, maybe I'd boost him ahead of it. If Eiserman dominates U.S. developmental program, USHL the rest of the year, maybe he can move up. But right now, Halinas is my number 2. And at number 1, not shocking anybody, don't need to rewrite the wheel with this. It's Macklin Celebrini right now. He's having a fantastic college season. He has 10 goals, 15 assists, or 25 points in just 15 games, which is a slightly lower points per game than an Adam Fantilli last year. But you got to remember, Adam Fantilli is 8 months older than Celebrini. That does matter. That does factor in. Also, I forgot to mention, but Cole Eiserman is an August birthday. He was almost a 2025 draftee. He's like the last week of August. So that definitely goes in his favor as well as terms of development. Luke Hughes, if we remember, was like a September 7th birthday. He obviously was young for his draft class. But back to Celebrini. When looking at Celebrini, yes, Fantilli had more points per game, but he was younger. Celebrini outscored Fantilli comparatively in their draft year -1 in the USHL. He's a fantastic prospect. He just does everything at a very high level. So yeah, I think he's on the same level as Fantilli, probably higher. I do like his offensive tools more than then Fantilli. Fantilli was more so crashing the net, a lot of breakaways, getting his goals off at Michigan last year. Celebrini's just dominating the game as a whole. He's fantastic both ways, very good playmaker, very good shot from any distance on the ice. I really like Macklin Celebrini. I think worst case scenario, he's going to be a low-end number one center at around 70 points. High-end, he doesn't have the Bedard, obviously, like generational kind of talent, but I think he can be a 90-plus point top 15, top 10 player in the entire league. He is that good. And interestingly enough, the NHL expected models that compare prospects at different years in leagues comparatively say that he basically is bust-proof. They have him at a 99% star percentage and a 99% NHL percentage. I obviously give you Fantilli's for a comparison. So the numbers, the other guys that have this insane 99 and 99, to name a few, is Patrick Kane, Jack Hughes, Jack Eichel, Mario Lemieux, John Tavares. I think Phil Kessel has it as well. McDavid, Crosby, Bedard. So out of that, like the worst players were like Phil Kessel and John Tavares. So like the numbers tell you he dominated the USHL at literally a historic rate, had the best 16-year-old season ever because, again, he's so young. And this year in college, just as a 17-year-old, doesn't turn 18 till June. He's probably the best player in all of college hockey. So he is going to be an absolute stud. Not a Bedard type, but definitely a franchise center. And definitely, especially with the drop-off after, there is a big drop. I would say arguably, this might sound crazy, the drop-off between Celebrini and right now, who I have at number 2, is probably bigger than the drop-off between Bedard, Fantilli, and Karlsson, because you could make an argument that Karlsson or Fantilli could have gone first overall over Celebrini. So when looking at that, it's definitely going to be a race for Celebrini. There's not going to be as much Bedard, Celebrini hype, but when looking at it, Celebrini should be the first overall pick. But anyway, let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? Who would you take second overall? Who would be in your top 10? I want to hear from you guys. I'll be seeing you in the next one.